Well, good morning, y'all. My name is Russian Kimball. My pronouns are he, him, his. I have the privilege of serving as the pastor of Broadway United Methodist Church in downtown Orlando. And also my drag name is still a work in progress. So if you have any ideas, just please let me know. There's one floating around, but I'm not going to share that one with you. But I'm still taking other suggestions. Well, good morning. Morning, y'all.
Morning, y'all. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fine program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. I was going to start with a different video, but if I start with the other video, I was like, people might think that they walked into the middle of a show. That wouldn't really be productive. That's not what I want to happen. People would be confused. So I will tell you this. I have a special guest joining me. Soon. Tonight. Yeah, I have a special guest joining me. Someone you all know and love is going to be here soon. But yes. So I need to share this with you, catch you all up to speed. We're just going to get this out of here. Sometimes you just swallow a pill. Apparently, somebody who looks and sounds a lot like me and appears on this channel once was recorded saying something like this. Conviction says when the court enters a plea of guilty or a finding of guilt by a jury enters a plea of guilty or a finding of guilt by a jury or the courts. This is a very confusingly and poorly worded horse and flag. I'll try and find it.
I'm easily distracted.
Look for it. Let me explain to you, because I've walked everyone through this over and over again, and I'm telling you right now, Nate the lawyer, respectfully, I love you, brother, but you're wrong. He wasn't wrong. Okay? Flat out 100% wrong. I'll send you an invite if you want to come on up here, and I'll tell you, you're wrong. Because what this means, when you see this here, what this means, the conviction is when the court enters any of three things. There are three things they can enter. It's the entry, that's the conviction. What are the three things they can enter? They can enter a plea of guilty, or they can enter a finding of guilt by a jury, or they can enter a finding of guilt by the court. Which is one way to look at the word entry. Like an entry with the clerk of the court. You could look at it as someone entering a plea of guilty, though. Like you go into a criminal court and you say the person's going to enter their plea. There's another way to look at it. Okay, so today I had a lengthy debate with Nate the lawyer. We started on the phone and he's like, let me show you the website. We ended up coming in. Oh, my guest is here. It's darkness. Darkness. Oh, there we go. It was pitch black when I saw you back screen. You look like you're in pajamas. Did I get you?
Nope.
Did I get you in the middle of the night?
No, are you kidding? It's 10 to 9 here. It's
10 to 9. My friend over here, Ron Coleman, is out as far west as humans dare travel.
and
right?
still be in America. That's right.
Well, I guess Hawaii is technically probably further, right? I mean, but contiguously, this is about as far west as we're able to get. That's not even contiguous. It's beyond contiguousation, right? I mean, Alaska is not contiguous. You got to go through
I'm in Juneau.
He's in Juneau,
Alaska.
the Jew in
Otherwise
Juneau.
known as no Jew, Alaska.
Really? It is, right?
So it is. So this is a place of white people and natives.
Eskimo is Eskimo a dirty word? You can't. Are you allowed to say Eskimo?
You're supposed to say Inuit.
Inuit. You're not allowed to say Eskimo.
I don't know about not allowed, but
That's like,
I think what
I would think like Skmo would be like the slur, and then like, but Eskimo would be like, okay, but
you would think this based on
just based on never having met a single one in my life.
So I'll tell you about Alaska. Besides the fact that it is those are the kind of people. Everyone's really nice.
I have no doubt about it. I have no doubt about it.
Yeah, everyone is nice and polite and helpful and gracious. It's beautiful country. Juneau in particular is rainy. I got here in the middle of a snowstorm. I was last plane to land during the first hour on Monday morning of this week. And since that time, it has turned into rain. And you're probably colder in New Jersey than I am here in Alaska. But I am nonetheless I'm wearing my outdoorsman shirt. See.
Oh, yeah, you look very rugged.
Well, that's I can project any look.
Right. Now you carry it well. You carry it well. So and tell everyone why you're there.
So among the things that Alaskans voted for besides candidates in the election at the beginning of November was a ballot initiative to rescind the 2022 ballot initiative by which Alaska became a ranked choice voting state, meaning that there were no longer Democrat and Republican candidates, but rather Democrats and Republicans were all thrown into the same bucket, and the two highest ranking voted candidates it's not a multi-stage thing, but rather everybody ranks their vote. And this was, when I was in college and I was studying economics, and even after that, this was supposed to be under like game theory. People said, oh, this is really better. Why should people have to choose, why not find candidates that most people are okay with, as opposed to two candidates of which 45% of the people hate and 45% of the people like? Why not just find someone that 65-80% of the people like, consider to be pretty good? And whether it was anticipated or not, what the experience apparently has been not so good, because what happens is you get candidates. It's much easier to split the vote. Not so good. It's much easier to split the vote and to weaken political parties. And so they voted on going back to the old way. And the referendum question to go back to the old way lost by 600 votes. Now, there are only about 700 people in Canada.
I was just going to say, like, how many people voted?
So there's a recount going on, and I have been sent here by the Republican National Committee to make sure that the recount, not I myself, they hired Harmeet Dillon to send a team of election lawyers, and I sometimes moonlight as an election lawyer, and they were looking for volunteers, and I said, well, gosh, I've never been to Canada. Same thing, right? I've been to Canada, but I had never been to Alaska. Mm-hmm. And here was a chance for me to go to Alaska. Mm-hmm. And I will say that this kind of work is tedious. But
so what okay, so they lost by 600 out of roughly how many people voted?
let's say a couple million. I don't know what the number is. The hell do I
Okay.
care?
So,
So it is a small. It
very,
is a
very small
small.
percentage.
It's a small percentage, and there definitely were some other irregularities because of the weather that prevented certain ballots from being processed properly, which might actually get resolved during the recount.
Oh, okay.
So it is
Is there an
within the realm.
expectation? Is there an expectation that those ballots will help the cause?
I think that somebody in power, and I'm not, I can speculate about this because I'm not in remotely within the envelope of people who are decision makers here. I'm privy to this.
Right.
Um, a very large investment is being made to very adequately staff this process with rather expensive legal talent, not only on behalf of the Republican National Committee, but other conservative organizations, and I assume that the Democrats as well. Yeah, there are people obviously from the Democrat side as well. So it must.
So folks feel like this is something that's a winnable battle. You're saying?
Yes, people with money on the line, people who are in a position to put money down, believe that there's enough on the line here that this effort is worth it. Yes.
The reason I'm asking that question is after 2020, I think a lot of folks, when they hear recount, basically feel as if we're just being jerked off. Like it's like, okay, we'll do the recount and it'll be exactly the same result 10 seconds, just after a month of belly aching, and that nothing, unless you have an audit, that there's nothing that's possibly going to benefit.
Well, I can tell you that I went to the recounts in Pennsylvania. I spent a week in Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago, attending recounts for the Senate race on behalf of McCormick.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that it's not an audit as such, but the information that's generated by a careful recount is auditable. And it did flush out a few hundred more votes. It was the Casey recount was ridiculous. It was mathematically impossible for it to have any effect. And I think the idea of when Casey insisted on it, I mean, he had a statutory right to it, but he also could have waived that. And the math said that he could waive it. My speculation is that his scumbag lawyer, Mark Elias, probably advised him to use the recount as a way to buy time while he probed for soft spots in the political and legal systems, which is exactly what happened in Bucks County, and which was unsuccessful. I mean, it was so over the top that even the highly partisan Democratic Pennsylvania Supreme Court felt that they had to actually enforce the law. And they did.
Those of you who are wondering who my guest is here, this is Ron Coleman. He's an attorney who works for Harmeet Dillon. He's out in Alaska. Harmeet Dillon is a relatively well-known attorney, probably one of the 20 most best-known practicing attorneys in the country.
But she's a member of the Republican National Committee.
Yeah, she's a big wig in the GOP. And she gets hired to basically fight election type of things on behalf of the GOP and things of that nature on a regular basis, and to fight other, let's say, MAGA-esque type causes, whether it's civil rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment type of things. That's the sort of thing that her firm tends to get hired for. She's the name on the door that gets hired. Folks like Ron are the ones. I'm not to disparage Harmeet at all, but I'm just saying, like, she's the draw, she's the rainmaker, she's the draw, the people coming for her. She has a staff of very highly trained and talented attorneys who who do most of the legwork. It's folks like Ron, and Ron is now in Alaska trying to overturn the outcome, which barely lost. I think someone put up a number there by like 700 votes.
Yeah,
less than 700 votes, where they're looking to. There was a ballot initiative, not on the winner, the persons who are going to be representing in Congress, but a ballot initiative with respect to whether or not they're going to keep ranked choice voting. The problem with ranked choice voting are too numerous to really recount in just a 2-hour show. But
really, wow, you must know a lot more than I do, which is highly possible. The thing about Joe is when he educates himself on a topic, he really goes to town. I really got to give him credit.
Oh, so you saw the topic for tonight's show, huh? My God! All right. Well, I'll share with you, and I think you actually joined me in assuming wrong on the law. So I was not alone. I was not alone, but I was the loudest. You believe me? Okay. I was definitely the loudest in saying stuff like this. That's what this sentence means. I admit that this is a very poorly structured sentence. This is me dissecting. If you don't read section 1.20, subsection 13 of definitions in criminal procedure, definitions of what conviction means. And yeah, basically today I had a lengthy discussion, first by phone, and then after that by a Zoom conference, so like basically like a StreamYard conference with Nate. And it was very calm. I was like, okay, so what do you think? What do you understand this part to me? How do you understand that? He's like, I don't have an answer on that. And then he would throw something at me, and I was like, well, I would explain it this way. And we were going back and forth for roughly an hour. And he's showing me like section 380.20. And I said, look at what it says there with sentencing. It says that if there's a conviction, you have to sentence. And that's telling you that since he didn't sentence, that Judge Mershon didn't think there's a conviction here. Otherwise, why is there no sentence? And that conviction comes when the judge decides it, rather than being a guilty verdict from the jury. And accordingly, Trump is not a convict. And I was banging this drum and screaming it, and it came up out of first when he got convicted, which I was saying was a guilty verdict, and screaming, it's not a conviction, it's not a conviction. Over the last few weeks, I don't know why on social media it's been resurrected, probably because a lot of Democrats are belly aching. I can't believe we elected a convicted felon. So, and it's been resurrected quite a deal over the last several weeks or so. And that's why I kept coming back and saying, he's not a convict, he's not a convict, he's not a convict. And then Nate came out saying he is a convict. And after I was done, we spent an hour debating it. I convinced him that his reading made no sense, that my reading made a lot more sense, and that nothing that he said, and he was like, yeah, that doesn't make it. Because he was saying, you have to understand, Joe, there's a conviction and then there's a judgment of conviction. So I said, why? What is a conviction if there's no judgment of conviction? What does that even mean? Like, what's the ramification of that? That doesn't mean any. Why would there be such a thing? That doesn't make any sense. And it was very calm. It was like very like, let's think through what the legislature is trying to do with that.
Why shouldn't it be calm? You're friends,
right?
You're both professionals,
and we're really just trying to figure out who's right. And he actually told me, he's like, look, I spoke to all these people who are part of the bar association. He's like, I really made like a whole bunch of phone calls to people, and they're like, then they were saying your friend's wrong, meaning me, that I'm wrong, and that there is such a thing as a conviction. If someone pleads guilty, that's a conviction, even if there's no sentence. If the judge, as soon as they say I plead guilty, that's a conviction. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit with the language of the statute. Doesn't fit with section 330.30, which says, and that was something that I spent a lot of time investing in. And I'll pull it up here for you. And you tell me how. This is 380.20. is the first one I'll open for you here, which says very definitively that the court must pronounce sentence in every case where a conviction is entered. So we haven't had a sentence. That's telling me that he doesn't think a conviction was entered.
I don't know that at all.
What?
This just tells me that it's not as if the judge entered an order saying, I will not be sentencing him. The judge just hasn't sentenced him.
Okay. So the other section I looked at, so you don't want to accept that. That's fine. That's fine. The other thing that I was pointing to was CPL 3. That was 380.20. CPL 330.30, which refers specifically to this stage here and says if you want to bring a motion to set aside a verdict, they don't say set aside a conviction. They call it set aside a verdict. And what are the grounds for that? In fact, Trump has even brought a motion under this section to set aside the verdict. And the way they word it is what do you need to have in order to do that? You need to have any ground appearing in the record which, if raised upon an appeal from a prospective judgment of conviction.
So that's much more compelling to me.
I was like, why would they call it a prospective judgment of conviction if you already have a guilty verdict? It wouldn't be prospective. He's already convicted. It doesn't make any sense.
Except that we know in civil practice, you and I are not criminal lawyers or criminal defense lawyers. I know neither of us is a criminal either. You can have a default, and then you have a default judgment. So default happens when a clerk enters default.
Great point.
And then the party that has obtained the default says, okay, Coleman has not answered the complaint. So what we're going to do now is ask the court to enter a judgment of default. So there are statuses that can amount to finality that are judgments of things that already happened. So let's go back to a civil jury verdict. Civil jury comes back with a verdict. Jury finds you liable for trademark infringement.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that you are not, there's now a verdict. There is not a judgment on which liability.
And that's what he was trying to say. That's what
right.
That's essentially what he was trying to say. And he showed me this language here. And this is where I ended up convincing him I was correct. He showed me this language here, which is 120 section 13, which says conviction means the entry of a plea of guilty to or a verdict of guilty upon an accusatory instrument other than felony complaint or to one or more counts such instrument. So you see, it's just the entry of you plead guilty, or if there's just a verdict, that's conviction. Then a judgment is comprised of both conviction and the sentence. Sentence is when you have the imposition of a sentence upon a conviction, and a judgment is combination of. So that's why he was saying judgment of conviction, a prospective judgment of conviction. That's what he was calling this here. I said, Nate, what is it defining conviction? When it says conviction here, that's when the only time it's a conviction when you just plead guilty or you just have a verdict is when you're dealing with a misdemeanor. It's an accusatory instrument other than a felony complaint, but meaning it's a misdemeanor. We're not going to go through the whole process. We're not going to be nearly as complex. But if it's not a misdemeanor, so this is only defining a conviction for a misdemeanor. It's not defining conviction for a felony. And he's like, yeah, I can't explain that. He's like, I think you might be right. He's like, after an hour, this is where I think you might be right. He's like, and all of a sudden he's like, hold on a second. He's like, I want to see if there's any case law on this. And he starts scrounging around for case law. And the first case he finds, I was like, you got to be kidding me. But the first case he finds is this People versus Montilla. And in that case, which is right here, they say flat out, they say they're trying to decide over here. This is a case where they're trying to figure out whether someone who had a verdict entered against them and did not have a sentence, whether or not they're considered convicted. And this is from 2008, this case. And the reason it was important was because it would enhance the crime that the guy committed, that he was using a weapon. And there's an enhancement if you're already convicted of a different crime. So they said, is this person here who has a verdict but has not yet been sentenced, do they fall into this classification of convicted of a crime? And the analysis that they do is they basically say, well, let's look at convicted under criminal procedure law 120-13, which says conviction means the entry or pleaded guilty to a verdict, what we just read here.
Right.
An accused or instrument other than a felony complaint. Therefore, it's pretty straightforward that based on this, they say, well, we got nothing, and then they try applying it to this statute over here, 265.02. But and then in the end of the day, they end up saying, we observe that the former code of criminal procedure contained no definition of conviction. Accordingly, courts gave the term a chameleon-like quality designed to meet what were perceived to be the equities of diverse cases before them. And then we went on to state the amorphous term conviction may have been under prior law. Any confusion was laid to rest with the enactment of CPL in 1971, that whatever may have been the rule previously, the CPL now says conviction occurs upon a verdict of guilty. And I'm like, but that says that's in a misdemeanor situation. How are you coming to this conclusion? How are you reading it that way? They say criminal procedure law thus embodies the legislature's decision to give the term conviction a definitive meaning so that the confusion regarding rating under prior law may be laid to rest. So they're saying, oh, you see, now we know that a felony, you're considered a convict as soon as you, and I'm like, but it says it's dealing with not a felony. That's what it specifically says here. I don't understand how they're reading it this way. It specifically says on an accusatory instrument other than a felony complaint. So I don't know. But this is the Court of Appeals. This decision, you can't argue. There's no arguing with the Court of Appeals because that's the final appellate. That's like the Supreme Court of the United States, but that's New York State's Supreme Court. We just happen to call the highest court here the Court of Appeals. So that is the final statement of law in New York, which means that under New York law, while I think that philosophically this is very flawed, the reality is.
But let me just ask you. How about the last clause? Or to one or more counts of such an instrument.
Yeah, but that could be a misdemeanor, multiple misdemeanor.
An accusatory instrument other than a felony complaint. Oh, the instrument being the accusatory.
A non-felony complaint. To me, that's like multiple misdemeanors. That would make sense to have easier to fall into the conviction status on a misdemeanor than it would on a felony. We're going to be a little bit more cautious in a felony type of situation before we just label someone a convicted felon, because there are ramifications to that. To me, this makes a lot of sense, a lot more sense. And Nate agreed with me. He goes, in principle, I read the statute the way you read it. I think it makes a lot more sense. But the law in New York is interpreted ultimately not by me or Nate or Ron. It's interpreted by the Court of Appeals, which means that as much as I might philosophically be standing on stronger ground in the Court of Appeals, that don't amount to a hill of beans because he's technically a convicted felon in the state of New York. So I apologize to those of you that I misled on the law. Clearly, I believed everything I was saying. I was saying in good faith. But the reason I really am making a big deal about publicly retracting this is because I've seen online people quoting me and clipping me and saying this is what Joe's position is. So now you know this is truth, that he's not a convicted felon, and I really believed it. However, now that I see we find case law, which from the highest court of New York, which directly refutes my position, I have to share that with you so you know that he is technically more of a badass than we realize because he's a convicted felon who became president of the United States. So yeah, I'm not upset that he's a convicted felon. I actually think he actually makes him. I want to see him. I want to see him with a hoodie and some bling, and the hat like a little bit like sideways now,
Well, I do still think though, and Danny Phillips on December 4th makes the same point in response to your tweet that I'm still thinking about, which is that there are still post-trial motions pending.
Right.
And until the court rules on those motions,
That was the question that
so I
Robert
guess
Barnes
Nate
asked
was.
me.
So
That was the
maybe,
question Robert Barnes asked me. And he asked me after I made my whole mea culpa retraction post. So he asked me, he's like, but what if there's still appeals pending? Which is a fair question.
no, forget. I'm willing to say forget about appeals.
Okay.
Because easy come, easy go. If you win your appeal, then it's all undone.
Will you let me go?
But
Sorry.
but there's still jurisdiction in the trial court, which can throw out the verdict. It's true, we do say throws out the conviction. We do use the terms interchangeably. But if the court rules, which of course this judge wasn't going to do, but if the court rules, because you see,
and that's what I asked. That's the first thing I started with him. I was like, what if there was a judgment notwithstanding the verdict? Are you telling me he's convicted? So he's like, that would be overturning the conviction that's there. I was like, how do you? And I was asking essentially the same question that you're asking. Since it's still in the control of the court, why would that be considered a conviction? You're essentially taking my position and just saying that until the judge makes his determination, that's not a conviction.
But to which Nate might respond, no, that's for purposes of entry of the judgment of a conviction. But once the jury, I'm now playing, the other side. Once the jury has been instructed on the law and returns a verdict, everything necessary for the conviction process. I mean, let's face it, this is an entirely semantic argument.
Well, it's not entirely semantic. Technically, it's can he carry a gun in New York right now? Would it be against the law for him to carry a gun in New York?
Okay, but let's back up. Can you put again that is it Montoya case?
Yeah, Montoya. Yeah, I'll pull it right here. Where do you want me to go?
I want you to tell me how it. So here he had a.
You want me to scroll up so you can see more of the facts of the case?
No. Just okay. Previously convicted of any crime, he was insufficient. Okay, scroll. Because he ultimately under the criminal procedure law, conviction occurs upon the entry of a verdict of guilty. I mean, that is what they are. That's ultimately where they're hanging their hat.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. I mean, again, but it is still semantics. See, in his case, he ultimately the conviction. It was a question of, I guess it was when he committed the new crime. Had he yet been convicted of the previous crime?
Right.
But let's acknowledge that legal outcomes frequently do hinge on semantics.
Yes, that's true.
And this is where it is.
It is where it is. Let me just get to a couple of these super chats. No, by the way, I have a thing up there that if I get, I think I put up there 10 orange super chats that I'm going to ask you to sing Hava Nagila. Otherwise, I'm not. So I sang
Hava Nagila.
Right, because I figure it's something that you sing like daily. I figure
when I go home to my kibbutz.
I figure it's the most well known. If you ever watch any movie which features like some sort of Jewish party, Jewish wedding, that's what non-Jews assume Jews sing regularly, even though we never ever do. So I apologize for misleading you, Big Wiggle. And let's go, Brandon. Ron may be better suited than you, Joe, but we have some troops pinned down overseas. Can we all pray for their return? Amen. We should all pray for their safe return. Donald Trump voted in 2024. He was a convicted felon. He would not have been allowed to do so. So the answer could be that in Florida, he voted in Florida. And it's would he be allowed to vote in New York is the question, because Florida might have different standards on that sort of thing. Joe, just say you gay and dumb, problem solved. I could. That's one way to do it. The case was pleading guilty, not jury convictions. That case, so not 100 the same. Yeah, but it says as you know, it says a conviction occurs upon the entry of a verdict of guilty. I mean, that's so it's not exactly the same case, but that's pretty definitive. That's not dicta when they're saying that there. That's them stating what the rule is. So, yeah, it is a little different, that particular case, but I don't think it's different enough. Asking to set aside a plea of guilty is much more difficult than setting aside a jury verdict of guilty, because they're not the same thing. Okay. From the civil side, you can collect on a verdict until there's a final judgment. You can't collect. That's true. That's true. But there's also no entry of, I mean, there could be liability, I guess. You know, there could be a
no, not until final judgment. But here the collecting, in both cases, it's execution on a judgment.
So that's the thing that I kept trying to point out to Nate. I was like, in civil court, if a judge signs a judgment on January 2nd, and it kicks around in the clerk's office for a month, and it enters on January 25th, you don't get the interest. Statutory interest does not start accruing until it's entered with the clerk of the court. You cannot start executing on it until it's entered with the clerk of the court. And if you want to engage in post-judgment execution, there's no post-judgment. There's no post-judgment interest until it's entered with the clerk of the court. You cannot issue any sort of subpoenas or demands or freeze any assets until it's entered with the clerk of the court. When you reference the judgment date you reference would be January 25th, not January 2nd. No one gives a damn when it was signed. All anyone cares about is the date that it's entered and recorded with the clerk of the court. I assumed it was something similar with the clerk of the court, that's what the whole focus is, entry with the clerk, that there's this judgment here.
But there's no reason that it would have to be so symmetrical or so analogous.
And that's what Nate's counter, which is a fair counterpoint, especially when you consider the fact that in criminal court, the term entry of guilt, entry of a verdict, does have a lot more connotations, because when a defendant comes up and pleads, he's entering his plea. So the term entry or entering has a lot different connotations in a criminal court setting than it has in a civil court setting, and that's something that should be accounted for when you're trying to interpret statutes which are referencing and using that word. So, and that's, you know, to if you're going to assess it with intellectual integrity, you sort of have to take that into account, which I hadn't considered, to be fair, to be frank with you. Unlike a plea of guilty, the judge still has an option for a J and OV. Accordingly, the full acquittal is still possible with innocence maintained throughout. Yeah, but is he now considered a convict? New York would say he is. So it's fair.
A term you used it also. Is that a term that applies in criminal law, or they just set aside?
Judgment. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. I think that's what they call it. Judgment, which is a reference, those of you who are not familiar with the term, judgment notwithstanding the verdict. I don't know why it's O instead of W.
Because it's judgment non obstantio verdictum.
Oh, look at you, the Latin lawyer. See, this is why Harmeet hires Ron Coleman and not me.
For the Latin.
I'm like, it's totally for the it's for that obnoxious, pretentious Latin.
Well, actually, they changed the federal rules. It's no longer called the JNOV. It's called it's all English now. But
that's the other thing. That's the other thing is, in federal court, if this happened in federal court, he would not be considered a convict right now. That is a New York State unique thing. That Nalligan's correct for pointing that out. So, but the question is he a convicted felon? Well, it happened in New York, and under New York law, he's a convicted felon. So it would be dishonest for me to not recognize that people making that claim have a valid basis to call him a convicted felon if you understanding New York law. So that's why I felt like I made enough of a stink about this enough times that I really had to set the record straight. Otherwise, people who would keep on quoting me, well, it wouldn't reflect well on me, and they would be speaking in error. So I apologize to those of you who may have had to retract based on quoting me. I do my best, and I explain philosophically why I came to where I came to. Even the people that disagree with me thought that my interpretation, many of them thought my interpretation is better than the Court of Appeals, but none of that matters, and all that matters is the Court of Appeals. So,
I mean, 2000. I mean, I assume that since they haven't spoken since 2008, that no one has raised that question of, okay, that's interesting, but how about the rest of the how about that language that seems to be surplus? That hasn't come up in any other case. Okay, so we're not going to do the legal research while we're on the air.
what do you like? Am I getting paid for that? No, I accepted it. I accepted my mistake. I was just saying the other day.
It seems that this case answers the question definitively, but it doesn't really answer.
Doesn't answer questions we have about their decision, about the logic of their decision. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Pete Hegseth?
Should definitely be approved.
Definitely be approved. You like the guy?
I don't know him.
Okay.
But I like him. I like his credentials, and I like the fact that everyone that I'm friendly with, who is knowledgeable on these matters, a couple of retired colonels, friends of mine, think that he's a fantastic choice.
Really?
And I'm not the least bit concerned about. First of all, the anonymous accusations are, frankly, it's getting very tired.
Mm-hmm.
When it's time for us to stop buying this crap. And I also, frankly, I'm not looking to make him my son-in-law.
Yeah, that's
same thing as with Trump. I want a guy who's going to get the job done, and he seems to really be well positioned. And also, I mean, and from what I understand, the scuttlebutt is, and when I say what I understand, I mean from what I see from the X accounts that I follow closely, who I trust, not from any inside information that I have, it's going to go through. But the pushback has been, the pushback to the pushback has done the job that it needed to do.
So the theme that I was planning on focusing tonight is the interesting political battles that happen within the party after the election ends, leading up to the election, and until we get a definitive outcome. It's Democrat versus Republican, or populist versus establishment, however you want to frame it. That the point is, though, that it feels like there's an us against them, where it's like we're hoping for our guy to win. Once your guy wins, the fighting turns into an intra-party instead of inter-party fight. And once your guy loses, it becomes an intra-party fight as to why did we lose? It's your fault that we lost, and how do we fix this problem? And so now the focus, for the last 3 to 5 months, we sort of turned away from fighting against the rhinos and the establishment GOP, and it was like, okay, let's make sure we get Donald in there. And now that it's over, now's when the real fighting starts in earnest as to who's actually going to be holding the reins of power. And in the Democrat Party, you see fighting going on as to like, whose fault is it? How do we fix this ship? What's the direction we should take? And who's going to be leading the Democratic Party?
He said ship. How do we fix this ship?
That is what I said. That is what I said. Thank you. It's, I guess, yeah. We have to be careful in case like there's closed captions afterwards. How that's not gonna play well.
So a lot of Rosh Hashivas watch your podcast, and
they stay up. They basically are. They're very, very dedicated fans. Yes,
they call it the mission.
Yes. So now I want to start, and I think that Pete Hegseth has become kind of a lightning rod for dividing people, and almost like a purity test. Are you really MAGA or are you really Rhino?
Right, because I think a lot of people were willing to say, okay, listen, the Gates nomination was almost a goof.
It was trolling. It was trolling.
A kind of trolling. I think Matt needed a hand to get out of the House. in a respectable way. I mean, you look at how quickly he.
What husband can't relate to that, right? The need to have an excuse to get out of the house. So
I went all the way to Alaska for that.
Yes, I actually quoted your wife last night. I did. I was going through her thread, which she did a very small thread breaking down the arguments from the and I actually. And I pulled up her thread and I was checking it out online last night. So
well, that's very nice to hear. She actually did a more fuller article on legal insurrection.
Oh, that's what I thought she wrote for Red State. It's legal insurrection.
Yeah, no,
she writes for
legal insurrection, and she keeps me up all night. And what do you think of this? What do you think? And she went to a better law school than I did. She doesn't need me to tell me.
Right.
But
she went to Stanford, right? That's what I remember.
Yeah,
is that correct?
She went to Stanford.
Number 2 in the country behind Yale.
And it probably was then also.
Yeah. No,
she's
only better than Harvard. It's better. It's
better than Harvard. Everyone goes to Harvard. That doesn't.
I'm saying is, if you're not an attorney, you probably assume Harvard is like the highest of the echelon, and that's why I'm explaining that lawyers understand, and it's long been ranked that number 1 in the country is Yale, and number 2 is Stanford, and 3 and 4 are Harvard and Columbia. So, yeah. So the Stanford is pretty impressive credentials for a white person to get into. Although back then maybe it wasn't quite as tilted. She might have had advantage for being a woman that back then.
Well, she will be the first to acknowledge that she had an advantage. Probably one of few Rhode Island applicants, who were in whose credentials got them into the mix. So if they, for some reason, law schools value geographic diversity. But listen, I mean, she ran the table at Hopkins.
And I gave her the ultimate compliment, which was I said that some people believe that a woman who becomes an attorney is almost by definition a vile creature, but I've met her and she is the nicest person on earth, like ridiculously nice. And yeah, so that to me that's a much more important cred than that she's a woman who became an attorney and happens to be an amazing person is a far more impressive credential. It's a far more impressive credential than going to Stanford. But you're saying she writes very well as well. Anyway, yes. I don't know how we veered into talking about Mrs. Because I
Coleman. Mentioned we talked about a man getting out of the house. Wife.
Yes, that's on me. Okay. All right. So anyway, what I wanted to bring up here is how we're starting to see folks come out who everyone assumed they're very strongly MAGA, or people tend to lean that way, and starting to come out against Pete Hegseth. And specifically, I'm talking about Greg Kelly here from News Nation. And here's his attack.
And that brings me to Pete Hegseth. You know what? This is MAGA. Are we going to be like China? Are we going to be like the Democrats?
Or it was either yesterday or this morning. It was within the last 24 hours, but not this evening.
If you step out of line, they're going to hurt you so bad. They're going to primary you. They're going to audit you. They're going to. Pete Hegseth is no Matt Gaetz. He hasn't done nearly enough for MAGA to warrant the Department of Defense job, and he's got serious baggage. Serious baggage. It happens sometimes. Not every pick is perfect. Where do I get this stuff, by the way? Not from the fake news, but from this guy. Tim Parlatore is Hegseth's attorney, and he's been making all kinds of statements that I don't think are particularly helpful to Tim Hegseth, like confirming everything in the New York Times story. And it's just, so he's putting out some information himself. And the email from the mom to Pete in 2018 made some people upset, right? Well, Steve Doocy read from it today, right in front of Pete Hegseth's mother.
I'm going to read part of it. You say, this is to Pete during the 2018 divorce. You say, I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, and sleeps around. And you go on and say, you are that man and have been for years. And as your mother, it pains me and embarrasses me to say that, but it is a sad, sad truth. You say, We still love you, but we are broken by your behavior and your lack of character.
That's intense stuff. His former employers, right? Reading it right there to the mother. And she was great. Let's hear what she has to say.
But Pete is a new person. He's redeemed, forgiven, changed. I think we all are after 7 years. He's a changed man, and I just hope people will get to know who Pete is today, especially our dear female senators, that you would listen to him, listen with your heart to the truth of Pete.
Really nice, right? But there are some problems here. Sorry, big time. According to Pete's lawyer, Pete is blackmailable. 2 years before that,
he's blackmailable. I don't know what that means.
What lawyer would say that about his own client?
That he's black? What, that he settled that the claims against him?
That there are claims against him that are worthy of being extorted to not discuss. I mean, your lawyer's not supposed to say, oh yeah, listen, if there's stuff out there about my client that if somebody finds out about it, he's going to have to pay through the nose to keep it quiet.
No, it was already, he paid. He already paid. He paid the, you heard about the
right.
assault allegation. So he paid that woman off.
So he, all right. So I don't know what it means that he's blackmailable. It seems like it might have been that he was willing to, that's just words that I as a lawyer would never say about my own client. Well, I'll leave it at that.
Right. Well, I don't know that his lawyer said he's blackmailable.
That's what I thought Greg just said.
No, Greg just claimed that. He just said that he's interpreting the fact that he paid off this woman as indicative of him being blackmailable. That he can be I guess he can be blackmailed.
Listen, everyone, there are many, many people who pay to keep stories, to keep threats of reports out of the press.
Yikes.
Because it's completely rational to do so, rather than to go through the agony of disproving them. I mean, the problem with blackmail, though, is that you never have finality, as we see.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. He's so aggressive in this.
The problem with giving into blackmail.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. He's making it as if this means you're black, like this was that he's done something terrible.
Right.
I mean, by that implication, so when Trump paid off hush money, that means he did something terrible? Is that how he's interpreting it? I mean, the whole New York trial arose from payments that were made to silence Stormy Daniels. Are you trying to say, so does that mean that he's not the right leader because he's blackmailable? I mean, what the hell is this guy saying? I don't understand the claim at all. It sometimes just makes good sense to say, rather than having these empty claims become fodder in the news, if I can pay this person, a lot of people, especially if we have no idea how much was paid, if it's $10,000 nuisance value, that's less than you would pay your attorneys, much less than you would pay your attorneys. A lot of people offer nuisance value, and the question is, how much is nuisance value? But nuisance value is, it's just easier to make this thing go away than to actually obliterate them in court. So you pay the money, and then you figure it's like, if it's cheaper than what I would pay my own attorneys, let me just, and they're signing a non-disclosure, so let me just make this thing go away. But this guy is very, very aggressive, and look at just the eye rolls that he makes.
Pete Hegseth was conferring with President Trump at Trump Tower about high-level political appointments, maybe even as Secretary of Veterans Affairs.
Besides,
he was at the Trump Tower. He had that conversation, and that's fine. Right?
He's
but
facing
2 years
a lot of
later,
this, Greg Kelly.
He is blackmailed by a woman who falsely accuses him, but he pays money to her anyway. Is he a new man?
Oh gosh, Greg, that would be the first time that ever happened.
No one's ever done that. Right? Exactly.
First of all, to me, this is immaterial. It's not immaterial. It is not particularly relevant. We don't have any of these issues come up with Democrats ever. No conduct, no personal conduct, no scandalous conduct unless they see their own, in other words, they got rid of Al Franken for doing something, a really stupid stunt, right?
What did he do? I don't remember the story with him.
He
I know
was-
that the way he got into office was seemed corrupt, and that there was all sorts of questions about the election there.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a different topic. But the point is,
how did he get removed ultimately?
he was accused of some really kind of low-level sexual assault. And the point is, at that moment, the Democrats are trying to make hay out of Me Too. So they sacrificed him on the altar. He agreed like a schmuck to go to the altar and be sacrificed on as demonstrating what someone who's accused of a Me Too crime should do, in the belief that this would result in a groundswell of a Me Too crime should do, a groundswell of people demanding that Trump, who had been accused by all kinds of people of doing that kind of thing, should also. I mean, it was really a stupid stage move. The point is, though, that unless there's a tactical advantage to the Democrats, no accusation ever prevents them from putting into office, no matter how creepy, no matter how perverted, no matter how bizarre, a cabinet member that they want. And you will never see the mainstream media, in other words, the Democratic House media, ever bringing up these moral issues.
No, they all get buried. There's a slush fund that Congress has that they pay off these things, which apparently, like, there's been like tens of millions of dollars they spent since that slush fund was first set up for both Republicans and Democrats. And frankly, one of the things that and many of us in MAGA are hoping for is that we'll have transparency, and that this will never happen because Congress will go nuts if all of a sudden those discrete the slush money payments were released. But it's like, those of us who are in the populace, I think both on the left and the right, are basically release the tapes. We want to know. We want to know why. If you're spending our money. It's either taxpayer money or it's donations that are coming to Win Red and Act Blue that are being thrown in there. I don't know how this thing is funded, but somehow, one way or another, it's not these Congress people who are paying it off. It's us who are paying it off. So, like, why do we not know who the heck is being protected from these allegations? It's crazy. It's really crazy.
From the point of view of an advocate, right? 5 minutes ago, we were talking about how there is a rationale. It may not be a very good one because, again, a blackmailer can always come back and demand more. And plus, once you've paid to settle a blackmail threat,
the idea
you have given it a certain amount of credibility,
right? So
that when inevitably it comes up later.
Right. Well, that's the point that Greg Kelly is making. He's like, I would never pay off someone who's trying to blackmail me. And it's like, really? I mean, because I'll tell you this much. If you read that woman's story and you hear what Pete said,
but there's an argument that goes like
the
that.
implication is that there was coitus there, right? I mean, even if you trust everything that Pete says, the implication is there was coitus there. The question is consensual or not.
He's even better looking than we are, Joe.
No. I mean,
I hear
not you.
People say that he's even better looking than you are.
All right. Well,
you and I put together.
Okay.
On our best day.
The point that I'm getting at, though, is there's very little, but since there's enough smoke based on the fact that there was the physical contact there, you can understand him saying, do I need to get into a whole he said, she said as to whether or not there was I forced myself on her when I was too bonkers out of my mind to really know, but there's no evidence because he when he tells the story, he's like, I was blitzed out of my mind. I was so drunk.
It's BS. It's baloney. Whether it's a little bit true or mostly true, he didn't rape her.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. She willingly went in there. She went in there planning on doing this. She's texting her husband,
and then she regretted it, and she came up with a story. Fine, it happens. Unfortunately,
right. And then when she goes, and then I'll tell you this much: when she goes, she apparently went for a kit test 5 days later after having been with her husband in between. Which to me The only reason you're doing that is because you're trying to lay groundwork to blackmail him. Because why? Because what the heck would a kit test tell anyone when it's 5 days later? She admits that she showered multiple times in between. So like, there's no fluids that are going to come up there. And if there is fluid, the last person she was with was her husband.
I don't want to talk about fluids. I don't want to talk about fluids. The point is this: this does not go. This is entirely an institutional and political and ideological operation, and there's got to be a point at which we say, no, we're not going to prevent a president from putting into place the people that he considers to be the ones who are suitable to do the job based on half-baked or even fully baked allegations that do not bear on his qualifications. That's it. That's my take on it.
Right. Well, Greg Kelly, though, is not the only one who has been coming after. Greg Kelly's getting a lot of heat on social
Yes, he
media.
is. I noticed that. Yes.
He's getting a lot of heat. People are very, very angry at him. He was saying that we should have got, that we should get Ron DeSantis instead. I don't know what kind of military background Ron DeSantis has. Does he have a military background, Ron DeSantis? And and when you hear Greg Kelly talk, he does?
Yes. I mean, there is actually a pretty good rationale for Ron DeSantis at Department of Defense, because he not only has a military background, but an administrative background. I mean,
Right,
managing a very large state and managing what one of my friends, I think it was Kurt Schlichter, said it was either Curtis or Nicole Publius, the largest entity in the world. The Department of Defense,
right,
is the largest organization in the world. That there are very few people who can say that they have that kind of experience. But I think it's going to be Hegseth.
Yeah. Well, apparently there's some backlash from various rhinos, including not just him, but Senator Joni Ernst.
Oh, she's already walked that back.
Has she?
Yeah.
Well, earlier on December 5th at 12:48, Senator Joni Ernst admits she isn't a yes on Trump's embattled defense pick, Pete Hegseth. Now, this is a woman, by the way, who what's interesting about her is that she's supposed to be the Senate liaison to Doge, which has a lot of people outraged that she's the one who's going to basically be working on behalf of the Senate to try and engage with Doge, because she's said a lot of things that people have issues with. This woman over here who was saying that, she wasn't yes. I didn't see that she had walked it back. You saw that she walked it back?
Yeah. She had a good meeting with him today. She didn't mean to suggest that she had made up her mind in any way. She's, because she has been getting absolutely slammed. Yeah. And also, so somebody made a really good point today, which was that we're no longer in this world where, senators historically didn't really worry about pushback because they have these long terms, 6 years. And there was always the sense that any individual position that they would take would be forgotten. And
3 years later.
Whether it was 2, 3, 4, 5, congressmen are already fundraising the day after election day.
Right, because they have only 2 years.
But now that Elon Musk has stepped up and said, listen, I'm going to help finance the campaigns of
in the primaries.
Right, primary challenges to people who are getting in the way of Trump appointees. That's a game changer. Once again, Elon Musk changing American history. He is.
He's the most important person on the planet, right?
Certainly the most important African American.
I mean, he is, right?
He's an absolutely historical figure, and we're living in historical times, no question.
Yeah. Well,
we're living in historic times.
If you want to know a little bit more about Joni Ernst, here's Here's more from Joni Ernst. Oh my gosh, this woman is a walking disaster. This woman has to be primary. She's from Iowa. She's from Iowa. She's from Iowa. That's like you know that the Republican is going to win there.
Today, many people across the United States are honoring the life of George Floyd. And so I would just encourage everybody to take pause and really reflect upon the loss of his life.
I mean, listen to this woman. I mean, okay, this is her on George Floyd. I have her over here.
People serving in our military, they will bleed. So the example of transgender people serving in our military, we have
transgender people
serving in our military. They will bleed red just as the rest of us. But I also take a stance that we should not be integrating transgender people into certain situations where it does make, if you have a female barracks and you have a transgender woman who has not transitioned, we shouldn't make the rest of the unit uncomfortable about that setting.
Hey, those people are uncomfortable about their unit in the first place. That's the whole problem. What?
I know what you said.
Oh.
I know what you said.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember Randy Johnson also.
That transgender individual. But if they bring value to our unit, if they have specialties that we can use, especially if we want to maintain an all volunteer force, we want to bring that talent into our services. And I know that's controversial, but again, I'm looking at what's good for our nation. And believe me, when we're facing a recruiting challenge right now,
we need as many weirdos whose bodies and brains have been as messed up by black doctors as we can possibly get our hands on.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that they're mentally disturbed, and they are. This is the problem. This all started with the psychiatric field doing a 180 instead of saying that these folks have a serious mental issue. Instead of acknowledging that it's dysphoria, that there's something that needs to be redressed, but doing a 180 and saying it's healthy for society to embrace it, and that's totally normal for someone to be like to have these delusions. And you know, if people are if we're not going to treat people who are sick, that's bad enough. Then not treating people who are sick and saying we should infect children as well and poison their minds, that is completely intolerable. As it's intolerable to say that someone who has these delusions or has serious psychological and emotional issues is totally fit to serve in the military, where it's like, I mean, the buddy next to you is dependent on this person who we know has psychological and emotional issues. It's just that our psychiatric industry is more interested in the money behind saying, hey, let's enable them rather than course correction. And the influences it's had on society, it's just seeped deeper and deeper into society, where this has become a cultural issue, which has obviously devastated women's sports. It's affected us on so many different levels that it's almost difficult to wrap our minds around, like, just how impactful this is in to the individuals who are suffering from the dysphoria, as well as members of society who are forced to interact with them and potentially face, terrible repercussions as a result of that ridiculous misdiagnosis from the psychiatric industry. So, yeah.
Like you said,
I got a bunch of super chats I got to get through here. So let me catch up on them. And now you all know how I feel about Joni Ernst. Where was I? I think New York is along the standard of guilt. We got this. Okay, it's now clear lawyers love to argue. That's true. That is true. If they terminate the case, what would Trump be able to do? He is convicted. Can he appeal as court never entered the judgment? Under 330, you can have it overturned. So, semantics question: are you convicted when found guilty by the judgment of the court or by that of a jury of your peers? By either, according to the court. Not wrong. Court wasn't briefed on this distinction. Okay. Can Trump go to Canada? Apparently felons can't travel there. What definitions apply? I want him to have a public dinner in Canada. Glad Republicans and those on the right can separate moral objections from and get crap done. If this was moral, panic Republicans who just sit in silence, do nothing because nobody's 100% moral. Yeah, that's
except Joe Neerman. Actually, I've seen him in action. The guy is sterling. It's ridiculous.
You're making me blush. Can Ron be our new great leader? I like Ron.
No, you know what? I don't. I'm not decisive enough. I'm too soft to be the leader. You need someone who is absolutely willing to, turn his back on a tough decision and not lose a minute of sleep. And I'm not that guy. Thanks, though. The benefits are great from what I hear.
is on the ropes, soon to be overrun because they removed their high standards for DEI. If you saw that Shrieking Festival in Stanford Law, right? When that federal judge came in there, how humiliating for Stanford. And then that dean who got up there and was like, saying, "Is the juice worth the squeeze?" Oh my God. Just let's enable them further.
Yeah, 100% right. Halligan, you're right.
Steve Ducey's Peter's dad. Oh, that makes sense. He looks older. Okay. What is this to catch a senator? Okay. How can you tell media is fake? They cut off response. News Nation cutting off mom's response. Yeah. Women can't blackmail men in patriarchy because that requires a position of power. Nice.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. It was consensual. She tried to cover up her affair. She got caught coming home late to her room with her husband and kid. Yep. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. If anyone took it, my point was that every step this woman took indicated that she wanted it. She basically honey trapped him, and then for one reason or another, either for the money or to save her marriage or both, she basically decided, I'm going to turn on this guy. So, and whether she decided to turn on him before she actually engaged or after she engaged is really irrelevant. So. DeSantis was a JAG officer. Oh, okay. The reason I think that Greg Kelly wants DeSantis is there seems to be this whole DeSantis camp that's still out there dormant right now, which is hopeful that he's the heir apparent in 2028.
That's a hard sell now. JD Vance has been so outstanding, but we'll see.
He has no chance. And listen, from 2022 in the year 2020. Basically from 2020 through 2022, he was the epitome of what we all were hoping our governors would be. There's no two ways about it. Paul Abbott would follow 2 steps behind him. Whatever was happening in Florida would happen 2 months later in Texas. Okay, sure. He was great, phenomenal. What people who loved DeSantis failed to appreciate 2 significant problems that DeSantis has as a potential president of the United States. Number one is you didn't hear anything from DeSantis in 2019, in 2020. The reason you didn't hear from him then is because he did not have a supermajority in the state legislature, and nothing got done. So yeah, when you have a supermajority, so he was able to basically make healthy decisions and saying that you can drive through crazy protesters. We're not going to trans our kids. Disneyland can go to hell, and saying all sorts of base things that all of us can get behind and say, kudos, you're amazing, Ron. But if he doesn't have a supermajority, so his ability to be effective is very much in question, because without that supermajority, nothing really significant seemed to happen. That's the first critique I have of him. The second thing is
doesn't that critique
apply to everyone in theory?
Well, I mean, it seems that it answers itself. He couldn't have gotten anything done. So
how would he do anything as president? Well, how would he be more useful than a houseplant as president?
If he had no congressional power,
which I'm assuming we have to assume that it's unlikely he'll be able to have both that. He'll be able to have 60 senators and 51% of
there's an argument to be made that by not being partisan and just, in other words, if you don't have political power and you're the governor, I don't see the advantage of just doing a bunch of symbolic, off-putting, bridge-burning press conferences that don't get you anything done
Fair enough.
If they don't, but your point is well made, which was that I would maybe flip it around, which is that guess what? When you have a supermajority in the legislature, almost anyone can get things done. Although, as you point out, you think of that of Greg Abbott, and he's been a bit of a disappointment. Okay, that's number one. Number two.
And number two is that he has there's a cardboard cutout of him that's in front of his governor's mansion, which has like 6 times the personality he has.
He does. He is a bit of. I do think he lacks charisma.
It's not that he lacks charisma. It's like he swallowed charisma and is basically
and digested it.
and it's like turning his stomach, and you can see, and that every time he smiles, you can see it's turning his stomach, because it's just when he's talking, even when he tries sounding excited, it doesn't sound exciting. He has a very there's just nothing about him that makes him a compelling listen. And we see the power of charisma or the death knell of someone who has no charisma, like Kamala. Now he's not as off-putting. She had a terrible personality. He just has no personality. But which is worse? I'm not sure. So I don't. And the counter I would have on the whole majority in the House, or supermajority that he had, is one of the things I liked about Vivek when he was running. And I know there are people in the audience who don't trust him, and they think that he's a plant or whatever it is, that they think that he has his own personal agenda, and that could prove to be true. But one of the things I learned from watching Vivek when he was running for president is that he actually had suggestions as to steps he could take as being head of the executive branch, that you do not need congressional approval. You don't, for much of them, you wouldn't even need to write an EO, as to how to run things in a way that would be more efficient and a healthier way for our government to run. Like, he was talking through his plans as how he would modify the FDA and implement different structures to ensure that they're not in bed with big pharma. And these are things, these are steps that anyone who's a commander-in-chief can effectuate. There are ways to govern and get your will across without necessarily having to pass legislation. And to me, a leader who's able to divine such concepts as to how to get around the problem of I'm not going to get this legislation passed, and use the powers that are afforded to me under the Constitution, that is someone who is displaying a potential to be impactful no matter how difficult the opposition is. And that's a real leadership. So is it leadership that ultimately is going to go in the direction you and I want? Or is he a plant? I can't tell you that, but I'll tell you that he definitely seems to understand our Constitution and how it works and how it can be used, even to overcome the hurdles of obstructionism that we should naturally anticipate you will have most of the time.
You're referring now to
Vivek.
To Vivek, yeah. Well, Vivek, he went to Yale Law School.
Yeah, no, he's a very smart guy. He's a very smart guy, and he really understands how things work. And that's what I'm saying. Do I know that he's not going to turn out to be some sort of like, he's really Soros in disguise, will rip it off, and it's like,
people really don't understand that. They have all these purity tests, and they go through everything everyone ever said, and every relationship everyone ever had, and every courteous handshake or that everyone ever took part in, or you get invited to an event. Very few people can stand up. Very few people whose presence and participation in things is actually sought by anyone can stand up to such purity tests. People who shit talk all day on Twitter and nobody cares, nobody wants to fund them, nobody wants to provide them with, with fellowships, nobody wants to have them speak on a panel. They're all very big on purity. But in real life, you have to deal with all kinds of people who you don't necessarily agree with sometimes in order to get out there and or to have opportunities and to get into the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not a reflection that all of a sudden your ideologies are poisonous or are secretly going to be infecting, are infected with some sort of poisoned, terrible thing. It's a matter of, I sort of point out that, one of the things I think people kind of miss is that even for celebrities, like they get starstruck when they meet other celebrities. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember someone said about some from the 49ers team all the way back in the 80s, 1981. They're in the Super Bowl. No, 1989. They're in the Super Bowl against the Bengals. There's 2.5 minutes left in the game, and they're trailing by 4 points. And Joe Montana comes into the huddle. And I think it was Dwight Clark who said that this shows you the poise of Joe Montana. He's in the huddle there. We come in the huddle, and everyone's 2.5 minutes left for us to win the Super Bowl. And he stops, and he looks out to the crowd, and he goes, "Hey, look, there's John Candy." John Candy was a big comedic actor, big literally and figuratively at the time. And the point is, like, he was kind of starstruck, like, "Oh, cool, look, there's John Candy." And it's like, and he was basically saying, like, he was not like overcome by the moment. Like, he was just like, even like sort of stargazing while he's in this, about to engage in what ended up becoming an iconic march down the field to win the Super Bowl. And what I drew from it is, this is freaking Joe Montana, and he's blown away by seeing John Candy. It's a reminder that even if you're a celebrity, you don't really appreciate necessarily your own celebrity status. And when you see or meet other people who are celebrities, it's like, oh, that's cool. I'm getting to meet this person who's a celebrity. So,
I'm surprised there must have been someone who voiced the opinion that if Joe Montana had really been focusing on his task at the moment, he wouldn't have been noticed as celebrities, right? Is that kind of
perhaps you can make that point as well. He was remarking as to his immense poise in the moment. That's what I think it was White Clark. I don't remember. I've been Jerry, right? So it was someone on that team. But you can look at it that way. Joe Montana as an individual was always came across as someone who was sort of dim-witted. He was actually on Saturday Night Live, and there was a sketch where he was like, there was this couple which was sitting on a couch late at night, and they're talking, and like he's like, he's like, "I really had a great time tonight," and then you hear the voiceover of his head, what's going on in his head. He's like, I really just would, would like to kiss her or something like that, and then her thoughts, what she says, and then you hear her thoughts, which are not, she's like, "Yeah, I had a great time too," and then she's like, and then like you hear her thoughts saying, like, "I can't wait to get away."
No, you're trying to tell us. You're trying to describe a sketch to us.
I'm almost done.
Okay.
And then Joe Montana comes in.
It's your show.
Joe Montana comes in, and when Joe Montana comes in, so like so the guy sitting on the couch is like, he's like, "Oh, look, it's Brad," and you hear the guy think, "Oh man, I can't believe Brad showed up now." And then him, Joe Montana saying, as Brad, he's like, "Hi, it's really nice to meet you." And then you hear his thoughts is like, "It's really nice to meet them."
right. In other words, he doesn't have to be anything other than who he is.
There's no thought beyond the words coming out of his mouth, because he always looked like such a simpleton that, like, while every other human has conversations in their own head, literally whatever he's thinking is what comes out of his mouth. And that was always the takeaway I think most people had on him. But yeah, sorry for boring you with the sketch. Gosh. Trump is being smart this time. It picks out early to allow populists to push ahead on the elected officials. Yeah, I think, do you think it's part of his strategy that he's like, let me get these names out here, and it helps me vet how popular they are. It doesn't really do anything. And then also, if they are popular, it helps push the senators towards actually embracing them, even if they otherwise would not. Do you think that's part of his strategy? Or do you think he's just being a showman the way Trump is? Or do you think it's just this is just Trump? Just he needs the attention Like, why do you think he's doing all these announcements on Truth Social? Do you think that he's trying to inform the public because he feels like they need to be informed about who he's going to be picking? Why do you think he's doing the Truth Social announcements?
I think he wants to completely change the paradigm about and around how information and official information and official media is going to operate in this country. The timing of it, I think, is a separate question, but it is just simply, the idea of circumventing the official state media, which is what the corporate media is, and using social media in this way is an obvious, to me, it's pretty obvious why he would do that.
Well, it's not obvious to me because I just gave you 3 different reasons, and I'm not sure. I'm still not sure which. If you were introducing a 4th reason that he's trying to redefine the landscape of how communication operates, and that's why he's doing it.
That's why I think he's doing it the way he's doing it. In terms of the timing, I do like your hypothesis that he is running things. I think that they have an incredibly savvy communications team in place now, far more than they did in 2016 or 2020, and they're really playing it great.
So you think that this whole strategy is very effective?
Yeah, 100%, because a lot of that pressure is being brought on X. That's where it's happening, and it makes a difference.
It's interesting that it's coming on X when all these announcements are coming on Truth Social.
Right.
Because there's another agenda you could say that it's his way of trying to bring significance to Truth Social, but it goes out on Truth Social, but all the action about it happens on X.
Yeah, I think he's contractually obligated, and
yeah, that's almost definite. Yeah,
right, and probably has a fiduciary obligation. So, but there are plenty of people who are getting that news from Truth out to X.
Oh yeah, as soon as he makes when he says anything on Truth Social, in under 60 seconds, it's all over X. So,
yep.
And it's been like that for over a year now. Ernst had to walk it back because she possibly has a registered opponent for the primary already. She's pretty well cooked herself. Hegseth passes. I hope so. You think he's going to pass?
Yeah.
You think Cash is going to pass?
Yeah.
You think Cash is going to really rip apart the FBI?
Yeah. I think we're in for some amazing.
What do you envision? What do you envision happening with the FBI as a result of? Let's assume Cash does get in. What changes do you envision happening with the FBI?
I'm not sophisticated enough to answer on that. I think a couple of really good people on that topic are Shipwreck Crew. He's had who really is familiar with the agency, and of course another one of my friends, Kyle Serafin. They're going to be cutting.
You know Kyle? How do you know Kyle?
I know Kyle because we've been on each other's podcasts.
Oh, okay.
We have been. There were a number of administrative structural changes that were made to the FBI that really separated the rank and file from the regional directors who became sort of little princes, and a number of these guys have enunciated changes that would really make a difference, and that's why there's so much opposition to Cash, because he understands it. But I mean, also there just has to be a lot more transparency. I mean, I did an interview of a couple of guys, including Michael Waller, who I asked him, well, what would happen how indeed would you go about getting rid of the FBI? Because I do think the FBI is hopelessly compromised. And he said, there's no need to even maintain it. A lot of what it does can be handled by other agencies, and it's a whole. I mean, it's beyond the scope of my expertise, but major changes have to take place. And frankly, Trump could have done a lot more the first time around. But of course, the argument was, oh, he's trying to kneecap the Russia investigations. So.
Mm-hmm. On Rumble, I got a couple of rants here. Texley said, Joe, I sent you an email. Dr. Haim in Texas is at risk of being gagged. I sent you the link to the docs. I have looked through his case. I actually looked through the application to see him be gagged. I read through it because I was curious to see what implication it might have on my application, if any. I actually learned a lot from reading through the application to have him gagged. And I was curious to see if they were going to quote from the DC Circuit Court case, or the what happened here in New York and the application that was made in Florida. I was curious to see whether they were going to employ that and try and use that over in the Dr. Haim case, as I worried other courts may do. They didn't, though. What was really interesting in that particular case is they actually relied on one case from the Fifth Circuit where someone was similarly silenced. It was a case I was unfamiliar with. It was very helpful because in that case that they cited, I read through that case, which is a very lengthy decision, and that lengthy decision was really addressing the notion of gagging a criminal defendant in what contexts that is appropriate, and it identified a circuit split. It identified a circuit split between the Fifth Circuit versus the Ninth, Sixth, and Fourth Circuits, Ninth, Sixth, and Seventh Circuits, and they was basically saying the Fifth and Fourth Circuits feel this way. We disagree, and they say that they can be gagged, as opposed to the Sixth, Seventh, and Ninth Circuits, which say they cannot be gagged. This is a real circuit split that the Supreme Court should be weighing in on, and hopefully,
Supreme Court has been terrible at this. They frankly don't work enough. They take the whole freaking summer off for no reason. They're not going back to the farm and hopping on the back of threshers. Okay, They can work through the summer like everybody else. They should be taking a hell of a lot more cases. There are a lot of big circuit splits that they have allowed to fester. Every case has to be perfectly framed, the perfect moment, the perfect this and perfect that. Meanwhile, the law is different for Americans, citizens of the same country, depending on what circuit things are taking place in.
It's ridiculous.
Why
it's
have
ridiculous.
A court of it's
if you're not going to have a court that's making a determination that's going to actually say what the law of the land is across the land, then what's the point of having that court in the first place? That's essentially where you're going.
It's not good.
Right, but to conclude on responding to your email, Texley, and your rant. So there's nothing there that I can do to help Dr. Haim, because the basis that they're trying to go after him is completely different case law than the case law that the line of cases that I'm attacking. It's really rooted in Fifth Circuit case law, in a case that the previous case from Louisiana. So it's not really along the same lines, but it does help me. Reading through it helped me learn more about how disparate these circuit holdings are, and just highlight how necessary it is for the Supreme Court to weigh in on it. So in that sense, it was helpful. Curious Angel asks this question, which I'm going to throw at you. Because of Hunter's blanket pardon, if, say, Bondi charges Joe on one of many illegal acts, is it true if called Hunter cannot plead the fifth?
Not necessarily, because if any of the testimony that he gives would make him susceptible to liability, criminal liability in any state, then he still has a valid Fifth Amendment claim.
So what you just touched on is something that I touched on in the Little Woody case down in Atlanta, in that RICO case, right? So you followed that story, right?
No.
Everyone followed this story. The Judge Glanville, where he got removed, and the whole young.
Oh, yeah, that was out of control, man.
Yes. So Little Woody was the person that they were putting pressure. Was the person they were putting pressure on and saying, "We're granting you immunity, so you have to testify, otherwise we're throwing you in prison." And the question I had is, this is a position that a lot of courts seem to take, and district attorneys take, that the grant of immunity is now an insulation that you have, which strips you of your Fifth Amendment protections. But I was like, so just because he has insulation from Georgia RICO charges, that wouldn't insulate him from federal RICO charges. Why would he? And by the way, one of the things I learned when I was covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is in federal court, it's much worse than that, because Ghislaine Maxwell said, I have immunity, because when Jeffrey Epstein was facing charges back in 2008, 2000, whatever, he argued and he negotiated a plea deal which specifically named me as someone who has immunity. And you know what the court said? Why she doesn't have immunity?
No, I don't.
The court said that when a district attorney from a particular district grants you immunity, that only affords you immunity in that district. So if you have an attorney from the United States from Southern District of Florida and they grant you immunity, that means you can still be charged in New York, you could be charged in Wyoming, California, you could be charged in the Northern District of Florida if there's a venue basis for them to come after you there. All it does is it protects you just in that district, just from federal charges. It doesn't protect you from state charges. It's such little empty, stupid protection. And they make it as if like, well, you have immunity now. Your Fifth Amendment is wait, that's crap. That's crap. But a lot of courts seem to go along with it. So would he have immunity? I mean, a lot of courts would try to claim he would. But if I was his attorney, I'd tell him, you don't have no freaking immunity. That's ridiculous. Unless you get from all 50 states, you get immunity from their district attorneys and statewide in each state. You don't have freaking immunity. You don't have immunity in Delaware where you reside. You don't have it in Virginia. You don't have it in Florida. You don't have it in California. All these different places that you've been dancing around. You don't have immunity there. And no, he's not testifying. That's what I would say if I was his attorney. I assume his attorneys are no less capable at litigating than I am. So, I mean, they certainly charge a lot more than I would, I'm sure. So, yeah, I'll tell you right now, that's my take on it. That courts will try and tell him that he has immunity, but the reality is he really doesn't. He really doesn't. By the way, I know that you said you only give me like an hour, so you've been here an hour and a half. If you need to dip out at any point, you just let me know, and I'm not chasing you, but I just
I appreciate that. We actually are starting, even though it is only 10:30 here in Juneau, but I am required to return to the state building, which is a building next to the state capitol, at 8, and so I got to.
You got to do
that. And what's interesting here is that the sun doesn't.
What are you doing for Shabbos? You have Chabad?
There's no Chabad in Juneau.
No way.
There's no Chabad in Juneau. I would have to fly to Anchorage, which is like an hour and a half flight. So I'm going to be
Alaska's really big. Alaska's really big.
I'm going to be having an all alone in the Airbnb, lonely Shabbos. I've got a hot plate. Don't tell my hosts. I don't know that they have a hot plate rule or not.
I won't.
But I mean, I'm all set, and I went to the bookstore today to get reading material because, by which I mean, of course, Taylor. Yeah. Well, it also Shabbos starts around 3, and it ends after 5. Because, it never really, this time of year, the sun doesn't really set. Like it never really gets dark enough. So the posek, who one of my rabbinical sons asked for this question, said, you have to end Shabbos when it gets as dark as it's going to get. But even so, additional problem is that the sun, I'm still pretty much on East Coast time. I get up at 7 and it's still pitch black out. Pitch black at 7. So I can't even daven until, so I need time to daven and then run where I'm staying. It's about 20 minutes to get to where I'm going. In any event,
All right.
I did see though there was a super chat that named me, and I don't want to run out before. If there's a question for me, I want to answer.
Oh, let me try. I'll run through them. Ron, while you're here, you should visit the good part of Alaska and not Canada. Light.
Well, if I were going to do that, though, I probably wouldn't even want to do it in December.
I don't know what the good part of Alaska is, but no, Joe, it all started with WHO, because they're the ones who said they're no longer going to treat sex dysphoria as mental illness. All right. Where the WHO get it from? The APA. When do you have a mental health pandemic? When you don't provide mental health treatment to the ill, but require for the well to make them ill. Yep.
Ill.
Listen, Alice, copyright cuck, so Joe has to describe it only. This is true.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
7th floor at FBI can be launched into space with Elon via Doge in cash. Good night, Joe.
That's
and
the
Ron.
answer for us. Okay, thank
That
you.
is the ultimate answer. All right. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I still got a little bit more here. So
Yeah,
you guys watching at home, don't go nowhere. But
a lot more sketches to describe.
There's a lot more sketches.
Joe, thanks for having me.
It translates much better that way.
Great to see you guys.
Oh, as always, have a good Shabbos, my friend.
Thanks a lot. All the
We'll
best.
miss you. We'll miss you back home.
I appreciate it. Bye.
Take care. That is the great Ron Coleman. Please make sure you sign up to him. If you have any questions about what he was talking about there. By the way, Tony, if you could stop with the whole all caps thing, I'd be much obliged. Okay. I I've been patient with it. I didn't want to call you out in front of my friend there. I didn't want to embarrass you, but it's not cool. I have 3 rules. Everyone knows the 3 rules. No racism, no violating terms of service, no spam. Now, I usually regard spam as repeating the same thing over and over again, but when you have post after post after post in all caps, it just disrupts the flow. And it's just very self-involved, and no one really cares. No one reads. Trust me, all those letters you read through there, people read 4 words of it. Okay? No one's reading it. So just stop, because it's annoying. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, you're not the only person. You're not it's like just stop it. Just stop it. It's like just grow up. Oh God. Wow. What's wrong with you folks? What's wrong with you? All right. I got a few more stories I want to cover with you all before I send you on your weekend holiday, your weekend retreat. So let me get to that post haste. What did I have here? Oh, yes, this guy here. My new favorite Democrat. I never thought this would happen with this guy. This is my new favorite Democrat. I have 2 new favorite Democrats. 2 people I never would have thought this about. Never in a million years would I ever thought these would become my favorite Democrats. But I'm not even being facetious. I mean it. John Fetterman. My God. This is him on The View talking to Joy Behar. Just breaking her heart.
Well, I think it's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated, but I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now it's that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate, and I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases, and we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
They'll say that about the J6 people too, though, right?
It was weaponized against them. He won't go that far. It was weaponized against them. Of course it was. It obviously was. Why was it in Washington, D.C. if it wasn't being weaponized? Why did all of them have to go to Washington, D.C.? And I understand that's where the side of the incident happened. You could have tried them back home in front of people who were not triggered. Imagine if Hunter Biden was tried. It was brought out before the RNC at a jury of RNC people who were basically trying. Would that be fair? I mean, come on. Everyone saw what was happening there. Everyone saw that. Of course, that was politicized.
That's what they're going to say on the other side. That is weaponized.
I'm not referring to.
I can't go that far. I can't go that far. I understand that that's the sacred cow. I'm not slaughtering the sacred cow in the January 6th convictions.
That I'm talking about the New York trial, and now the Democrats on our side there were some that were gleeful, calling it like now he's a convicted felon and those things, and now for our party we were talking about criminal justice, and we're now talking about second chances, and now all of a sudden now you're like, well, he's a convicted felon and all these things. And now clearly, again, both of those trails, the Hunter Biden one and the trial in New York for Trump, that was politically motivated, and those kinds of charges would have never been brought unless one side could realize that they could weaponize that.
Senator.
Well, she's saying, wow, like, I can't believe you just said that out loud on our show. How do you say that? You're a Democrat. How do you say that on our show? The shrieking harpies of the View, not happy with him saying basically he's not a convicted felon. We all know that was crap. Now, frankly, I'll tell you this. I don't want him to get pardoned from Biden. Not that Biden has the authority to pardon state charges anyway. It would have to come from Governor Kathy Hochul. I don't want him to be pardoned. No, I'm happy that we voted for the convicted felon. You go do whatever you want with those stupid charges, New York. You run that up the tree. Because I'll tell you right now, if they ran all the way up the tree, Court of Appeals, I think, would overturn it based on those ridiculous jury instructions. But yeah, there were all sorts of legal issues with the way those charges were operated, the failure to actually timely notify him as to what the charges were really based on, because they didn't tell him what the underlying crimes were until he was at jury instructions being issued. It was an utter joke. For personal reasons, so that I can continue to fight the whole ungag Trump thing and try and right America from this wrong ship we're on. That I hope this case continues to linger. It helps me. I'm not going to kid you. It's one less fight I have. So it's good for us. One more statement here from Fetterman that the left is not too excited about.
You see yourself ultimately working with folks like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who will be heading.
Yeah, I admire Mr. Musk. He has been involved in very important parts of American society, AI, SpaceX, and other kinds of things. Yes, he's on a different team, but that doesn't make me an enemy. I don't automatically going to become a critic. It's like, hey. He has made he's made our economy and our nation better, and our politics are different. And I don't agree with some of the things that he might say, but that doesn't make him, like I said, an enemy.
You see yourself.
So, and yes, I can admit that he looks drain damaged, very much drain damaged when he talks. He does. And I sort of had maybe a thought that perhaps a drain damaged Democrat is like the smartest one, becomes like the smartest one. If you get hit with a stroke, if you're a Democrat and you get hit with a stroke, maybe you become smarter than the other ones. I don't know. It would make a lot of sense to me. I'm curious about your thoughts about that. Do you think that if they suffer a stroke, that maybe that they somehow become smarter? Because he sounds much smarter than your typical Democrat these days. It's really not even close. Anyhow, the second Democrat, and by the way, I have after this, I want to share with you what I think is the funniest video I found this week. The funniest video. It's 4 minutes where I was just laughing at this guy. This guy is amazing. So don't go nowhere, because the video I'm going to be giving you soon is it's 4 minutes that just made me laugh and laugh. That's not this, though. This is another Democrat, not Elijah Schaffer. He's covering the news for Vigilant Fox. But listen to this. Chris Cuomo. I don't understand. I don't understand where maybe COVID helped his brain. Maybe when he was hiding in the basement all that time, that helped his. I don't know. Maybe getting fired from CNN didn't seem to do any wonders for Don Lemon, so I don't think that could be it. Didn't do any wonders for Brian Stelter, so I don't think that explains it. But maybe watching his own brother get torched by the ridiculous left, not for killing tens of thousands of old people with ridiculous policies during lockdown period, but for leering at women. No, killing old people, no one cares about that. But you made rude jokes at women, so that's why that's completely inexcusable. Maybe that's what turned him into someone who can actually engage his brain.
Seize on the gift that Biden just gave him. Democrats are saying, "Oh, I can't support Biden's decision. This is about principle." Look, everyone gets protecting family except the cancel crazy people. But this isn't about that. This is about how Biden justified this. I guess I didn't put a fine enough point on it yesterday. So let me say it again. This was a huge admission, what Biden said here.
Huge! So huge that it was used by Todd Blanche in his application to get this thing removed in New York. They opened up with, hey, you know why you should be removing this? Because Joe Biden admitted in his pardon that his own DOJ has been politically weaponized. And then they sent DOJ folks over here to prosecute this case.
Who knew in the Democrat ranks that Biden was going to say he was pardoning his son, not because it's his son, not because he's got to protect him, but because of political prosecutions and overreach? Who knew? People had to know. People had to know how dangerous this pardon was going to look. And by the way, there may be another coming for his brother, and maybe himself too. Who knows? Because clearly what Biden is trying to do is insulate all three of them from funny money probes. That's why you bracket the 10-year period. It's not how that usually works. Usually you'd say, this is my son. This is what he was convicted of. He owns it. He pleaded guilty. That's it. I'm letting him go. He's my son. If you don't like it, I'm on the way out anyway. You would have gotten that. Democrats could say, no one's above the law. Forget it. Nobody believes that. And yet he's blaming his behavior in advance on a corrupt system. Tell me, who does he sound like? And that is the answer to why the Democrats lost.
That's one of like 400 reasons they lost, but maybe. I think their candidate sucked.
Because he sounds just like the guy who's supposed to be so much worse. And the Democrats, protectors of the institutions, let it happen. You let a sitting president say, the DOJ on my watch was dirty in how it went after my son. How do you let that happen?
And it really is a very stupid thing to say. The more you think about it, the stupider it sounds. It's your own DOJ that you're saying is politically weaponized against you. Your own DOJ. When you spent the last 4 years saying, you know that Donald was wrong because his own Bill Barr said this, Bill Barr said that. Well, Bill Barr said that it was the fairest election ever. Bill Barr said that January 6th was the worst event in human history. So you know that it's true. You know that it's true. Stupid bobblehead idiots. Just bobbling their head along with mainstream media. Bobbling their head. Come on, you know that Chris Wray said that it was the fairest election ever. Brad Raffensperger is a Republican. They said they lost Georgia. And here comes Joey. Here comes President Joey coming out and saying, yeah, it doesn't matter who's in charge. Doesn't matter who's in charge. There's still political weaponization. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Chris Cuomo here. I almost feel bad calling him Fredo now. I used to enjoy calling him that, but like he's stepping up. He's stepping up in the world. I'm smart. I'm smart. Why don't you give me jobs? I'm smart. He's showing he's smart. He is. Sorry, Chris. I can't help myself.
And in so doing, you have sealed our fate. You have allowed Biden to validate the exact argument. You gave Trump the exact baseball bat that Trump and the Funky Bunch are going to use to make justify to make justified what's about to happen. They are going to beat you to death with the bat you just handed them.
Yep.
They're just going to go after the other side for going after them. This is why you lost. You say Trump is FOS, and then you play the same game.
What is FOS? I don't even know what that stands for. I don't want to look it up. I heard him say this earlier, and I was like, what is FOS? I can take a guess as to what the F stands for. FOS. Oh, the F stands for full. I gotta use that FOS. I gotta use that. I like that.
I told you yesterday this would happen, and it happened today. I didn't think it would happen that fast, but it did. Trump's lawyer.
Yeah.
Trump's lawyers came out and said, Joe Biden admitted that the DOJ is politically weaponized. Come on. They also cited Jack Smith, where Jack Smith said, we're withdrawing this case now because we're not allowed to, once he's president-elect, no one's allowed to prosecute someone who's a president-elect. So you have to withdraw the case now. And we're withdrawing now. Please withdraw immediately, Judge Shutkin, so I can shred my documents. I need to shred my documents. I'm not legally allowed to shred my documents if this is an active case. Please let me shred my documents. Please, for the love of God. Please reject this case right now. Reject it now so I can shred my documents and move to Colombia. Wait, is Colombia a country that there's is gonna be free from extradition? Let me Google it. Which countries do not extradite? I would search that up now. I would do a Google search now for that, but I have a feeling that if you enter that question into Google, there's an automatic alert that goes to the FBI. If you put it, never Google the question, which countries don't expedite, because I'm telling you now, somebody you don't want to know is going to know about that Google search. It's like basically looking up, how do I dispose of a dead body? You don't Google that. You don't. Get creative. At least change it from human body to pig. You sort of gotta think it through. I saw a report today. I think it was Robert Gouveia was talking about how the Chinese have now hacked into our systems and basically have control of all of our apps, and all the information you share on there is now something that apparently they have. Should probably pull that up as a PSA for you all. So I'll bring this up as a public service announcement for you all, so that we're all on the same page. You can't say Joe didn't tell me. White House says at least 8 U.S. telecom firms, dozens of nations impacted by China hacking campaign. Top White House official on Wednesday said that at least 8 U.S. telecom firms and dozens of nations have been impacted by Chinese hacking campaign. Deputy National Security Advisor Ann Neuberger offered new details about the breadth of sprawling Chinese hacking campaign that gave officials in Beijing access to private texts and phone conversations of an unknown number of Americans, meaning somewhere in the 300 million range. Neuberger divulged the scope of the hack a day after the FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued guidance intended to help root out the hackers and prevent similar cyber espionage in the future. Other reports saying they have no idea when they're going to be able to fix this problem and how to get them out. So they've hacked in, they are in. You should be alert to that. You should be aware of that, because whatever you're sending, basically President Xi can read. Probably. Now, I think a lot of us probably take solace in the fact that That's a pretty big haystack to be looking for a needle of like my personal texts. So we sort of take refuge in numbers. At least that's my initial reaction is, oh, okay, I'll take refuge in numbers. I don't know if that's a wise thing to do though, because they probably can search through, if they do the right search. Probably, if they have a reason to be looking for you, they probably could search through and find you pretty quick. Just a thought. Just a thought. Joe, Shabbat Shalom. And also, as David said, lovers of God hate evil. You're spiritually obligated to hate Democrats. Fair enough. People think AOC will run for the Democrats in 2028. Watch the next president wear a hoodie. Being smarter than Dems isn't saying much. Well, that's true. Luck, a.k.a. reformed convict. The stroke gets rid of all the woke. Maybe. The stroke gets rid of the woke. Joe, nobody cares about old people. That's why they put them in homes. Says a lot about this generation, doesn't it? It was politically motivated for the Dems. Of course it was. Todd Blanche was just exposed having lunch with CNN's Caitlin Collins. Have you already commented on that? Traitor, source of leaks. You see, this is the purity test we're talking about. This is the purity test. I don't know anything about Todd Blanche other than the fact that he did fine work in defending Trump in the New York case, which was a losing cause, but we knew going in he was pretty much a dead man walking. I was very impressed with his cross-examination of Michael Cohen. I don't know him. I doubt you know him. I think Donald Trump probably knows him a lot better than you or I will ever know him. You can't sit there freaked out every time someone shakes hands with someone that we dislike and just assume that means that there's some sort of plant or that they're compromised. There is, there are plenty of good reasons why Todd Blanche would be sitting down with legacy media that would not be in any way indicative that he's some compromised figure. So I wouldn't lose sleep over it. Everyone on the left is so used to lying. Now they all lie themselves into a corner they can't get out of. Oh, they are so trapped. LOL, and they hung all their hopes on an idiot with dementia. They really did. And then they burned him and didn't think that he was going to burn them back. 1, hack announced. 2, deep state has to use encrypted apps to protect confidential info from China. 3, they can't turn over the data to Doge or Congress since they're using encrypted apps now. Maybe. You never know. You never know what the agenda behind the agenda is. And it's all speculation. It could be true. I was asking Ron when he thought the FBI would look like under Kash Patel, what changes that would happen. Stephen Miller was weighing in on his thoughts as to what Trump presidency is going to look like during the first 100 days. He has probably a better vision of it than I do. And here's what his thoughts were.
Well, let me paint a picture for you, Sean, of those first 100 days. Rapid, total, complete deregulation of American energy exploration.
That's a good start. That'll help bring prices down.
You're going to see an American energy boom starting right away. You're going to see all the regulations that are strangling job growth in this country and driving up prices, driving up housing costs go away. You're going to see the border sealed shut. The criminal aliens are going to be shipped home, and foreign countries around the world are going to accept the gang members and the cartel members that are poisoning our families and murdering American children. You are going to see peace begin to restore to the world as the president works to bring back harmony in the Middle East, harmony in Europe. You're going to see him work with Congress to pass another round of historic tax relief. And you're going to see a government that is accountable to the people again. The swamp will be drained on day one. Incompetent and disloyal people that are hurting this nation are going to be replaced with those who care only for the American people, the American worker, and the American future. That's what's going to happen. It will be a new golden age, Sean.
I don't think it's going to be drained. You had me until you said the swamp will be drained on day one, because that sounds like it's a multi-year project. So swamp drain, when you start giving, that sounds like Trump level hyperbole at a certain point there. It'd be nice. If the first 100 days you start moving in those directions, that'd be great. That's great. And it's nice to hear them enthused and ready to get to work, because there's a lot to get done. So it's good reasons to get charged up. Just saying, I'm not fully sure I accept that every bit of that's going to happen quite as fast as he's hoping it's going to happen. I want to introduce you to someone on the left who's a bit of a loony. A bit of a loony. I stumbled on her a long time ago. Literally, like, she can't go 3 sentences without saying something that's completely bizarre and stupid. She goes by the name of Politics Girl. This is her here. This, I haven't seen her. I used to check out her channel once in a while, see if I could find some good content to sort of laugh at this wandering eye, wandering brain individual. But no, let's hear some of her ranting. I haven't heard this one yet. Hopefully it's a good one.
I am feeling incredibly angry at the Democrats right now.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a Democrat. I am a liberal, which means I believe in individual rights and civil liberties. I believe in democracy and a free society.
No, you don't.
I am someone willing to respect people's behavior and opinions, even if they're different than mine.
Definitely not.
And I'm very open to new ideas.
Oh, not at
I'm
all.
someone who believes in the rule of law.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You believe in the rule of law as you want it applied.
And the rights of man.
No.
And I understand
you believe in the rights of women, not men.
that we need competent leaders for a civil society to run. But if those leaders are bad or don't do their jobs, I firmly believe we should be able to replace them. I vote for Democrats because they're the party that's aligned closer to those values than the alternative. And because I'm a pragmatist, I understand the country works on a two-party system. That doesn't mean I won't criticize the Democrats or push them to do more or blindly support their actions. It just means, to paraphrase my friend Franklin Leonard, of the two parties, they are simply the one I believe I have a better chance of fighting about the future with.
All right, that's enough of this one. All right. She's got a whole bunch of stupid takes. Basically, let's see what we got here. Curious if I can find stuff from when right after the election and see her griping and moaning. Maybe right before the elections would be good. Does she have any shorts? Let's see her shorts, because too long is just too much.
I'd like to talk for a second to Jill Stein voters. I get it. You're unhappy. You feel like all politics is bad politics. You don't like what's going on in the world, and you want to publicly acknowledge that with your vote. I hear you. I really do. But sadly, the way our system works, your desire to do the right thing will not work out in our two-party system. So no matter how noble your goals are...
Yeah, I don't like that one. We can do better. Mm-hmm.
There are so many stories of women denied abortion care in this country now that it's hard to even get your head around the scope of the lives being ruined. Imagine you're Amy Coronado of Houston, Texas, and you're months into a wanted pregnancy when you learn your daughter's brain has not properly developed, that she doesn't have two hemispheres. And if you continue your pregnancy, you're going to face complications from your own gestational diabetes, massive infections, and major risks to your health.
If that's true, you would be able to get an abortion.
What do? Your doctor tells you that in the past he would have referred you for an abortion, but he can't now because of the bans. Maybe you're a professional like Dr. Danielle Matheson, an OBGYN who at 18 weeks found out.
All right. Well, the ones where she's screaming are way better than when she's actually trying to sound rational. But I want to share with you this clip here, which was just hilarious. Today, I wanted you to get a little flavor for who this woman is. How big is her channel? When I last saw her, she was like 100,000 people. How big is this channel now?
I'd like to. So this.
I'm sure she's doing well. She's at 195,000 subscribers. 195,000 subscribers. So, okay. All right. This is her in the CNN roundtable. About to get eviscerated by Scott Jennings.
I don't want to be bringing back waterboarding. I don't want to be a country that tortures people, especially if we're the kind of country that's going to be using the military against our own citizens. This kind of thing concerns me.
What do you mean use against our own citizens?
What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What does that even mean?
I'm talking about
You said blue
sending.
states behave. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about sending the military into blue states to make them behave,
What
getting
is that?
Gavin Newsom under control, getting JP Pritzker under control.
What are you
making
talking
sure?
about? What do you mean?
Oh my God. Scott's face is so priceless. He's so priceless. What the hell is wrong with you? Who let you into this building? Oh my God. Are there like armed security around this crazy lunatic? Why did they shut down the asylums? What the heck what are you babbling about?
Getting Gavin Newsom under control, getting JP Pritzker under control.
What are you
making
talking
sure?
about? What do you
Talking
mean? Like
about
sitting
things
into
that
the
Donald
state
Trump has
capitol
actually
to
said.
commandeer the state government?
I mean, I hope not, but I'm definitely, he's definitely talked about that. I don't know why you're acting like you've never.
Oh yeah, he's definitely talked about, like, you know, taking having the military take over Sacramento and raiding Gavin Newsom's mansion.
Military to suppress in the Black Lives Matter era those protests in the street. He
was there himself.
Actually,
I just make sure I understand your position. That you believe Donald Trump is going to use the military to set up effectively like coups in state capitals of states that he didn't win.
I think you're taking it a step or two.
No, she said make blue states behave, and she also said round up immigrants. That
is what she said. Make blue states behave. Use the military to make blue states behave. You're gonna eat your peas and carrots. What the hell does that even mean? And give us all the brown people. Turn over all the brown people. Step away from the wall. Turn over all the brown folks. Eat your peas and carrots. They have such crazy visions as to what they think is coming. Oh my God. I mean, big things are coming, just not at all like they understand it.
It's not true. It's deport illegal immigrants.
Scott,
I think you just need to be a
I
little
don't know why
precise
you're
about these
acting.
attacks.
No.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry.
Hold on. I mean, look. I think you're right. Let's be precise. Trump has wanted to use the military to do things domestically that actually the military is not allowed to do.
No, not really.
I think that's the point that she's making.
How so?
Like what?
Like deport illegal immigrants. That is actually not
if you consider them an invasion, you can use the military for them.
A function of the military.
The military can absolutely be used to work with local officials to provide military resources, but working with other parts of the federal government and local officials. We already send the National Guard to the border.
Not against the will of the local officials or the will of the state government. We have a federalist government here.
The military is not supposed to take up.
What do you think happened in Texas over the last 4 years, honey? What do you think happened there? When Texas tried shutting down the border and Biden didn't want to let them. What do you think happened there?
Arms against American citizens.
They're
Period.
not. You keep saying that. This is about illegal immigration. You all keep saying American citizens.
Well,
it's
how do
about
we
illegal
know whether the
immigration.
people are illegal or not?
Well, when we
know after they're shot.
We have 1.6.
We know after they die.
We know after the shot. You're going to shoot them all up and then ask them whether they're illegal or not. You're going to be shooting all the brown people. Oh my God! I don't know who the black guy is. I don't know who that is. But I don't know. But yeah, apparently he's squarely in loony politics girl camp.
1.6 million people in this country
Scott,
who've already
you're onto
received
illegal immigration.
deportation
That's not
orders
the
from
point.
courts. They are
Hold
here
on.
illegally.
No, it's always back to illegal immigration with people who support Donald Trump. It's always back to illegal immigration.
People
But
are
that's
pissed about
that's not the only thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about the American people. We're talking about taking up arms against them with a military that's supposed to be protecting them.
This is not right. You cannot say Donald Trump is sending the military to
We
round
didn't
up.
say
That's what he
that
said.
is what he
That's
is
what he
saying,
said.
Scott.
That's not what I'm saying.
Totally false.
He said that.
She looks
Totally
so angry.
false.
That's
She's
what
so
he
emotional.
said.
Scott.
Where's the clip of
We're
her
in the
saying
fever
that?
swamps, Abby.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
What is your dispute here? I'm not even really
Because they're
understanding
saying
it,
that he's sending the military to shoot or round up American citizens. Not
We did not
true.
say shoot.
I think
people,
the issue.
Scott.
The issue.
You said
Scott,
take. He just said take up arms.
I said
Scott, why are you acting like Donald Trump
let me
has
ask
not
Elliot
said
here.
this?
I mean,
Look, I did say take up arms
Hold on,
because when
Solomon.
you send the army in, that's what they're there for.
Elliot.
Yeah. Scott Jennings is my spirit animal. It's actually a lot of fun to be sitting in there, just sort of like spinning their heads around with like simple questions like what? What does that mean? How would that look? I didn't focus on the U.S., but you hear about the shul in Melbourne. No, I didn't. What happened to the shul in Melbourne? Bunch of Free Palestine folks, I assume. Big part of impact will be in future. Dems just sent a clear message to urban minorities. Their kids are expendable, and Democratic politician kids aren't. Yep. Joe, do you think Congress should pass a bill prohibiting social communists from holding office? Socialist communists from holding office? How is that? How's that not a free speech violation? Sell it to me in a way that's not going to end up violating free speech. Because essentially you're going to say someone who's expressing those opinions that we should be a socialist country or a communist country would then face different repercussions. And I'm a very big free speech advocate. So walk me through how that would not end up manifesting as a free speech violation. So, and, you know, I think that socialism and communism is the ultimate evil, and it's terrible. I think racism is no less evil. And I wouldn't want people silenced for that. I wouldn't say we should pass a law that a racist can't be elected. So, yeah. Joe, she's not crazy, stupid idiot. It's confession through projection. The only cure for this sickness is hard accountability. That's possibly true. I think she is a crazy person. I think she's insane. Melbourne shul was burned. Last I checked, no word on the scrolls. There are people gathered for morning prayers. It's already called arson. This is the world we live in. We all exist and stay safe only through God's grace. And if you don't stand or support the Constitution, you shouldn't get its defenses. Just my 2 cents might fix some things. That I'm okay with. But again, then you sort of have a whole chicken egg thing. Like, so if someone expresses anti-constitutional perspectives, are they going to now lose? Now, are we not violating the First Amendment by punishing people who don't stand behind the Constitution? Although I guess that's similar to the whole flag thing. But the flag burning thing, to me, flag burning should. I don't think you should be allowed to burn the flag, but I've gone back and forth trying to research that issue over and over again. I'm certainly not in the mood for it now. I want to get to those funny videos and start winding down because it's near the end. We're getting near the end. I'm saving the best one for last because this way you all stick around to the very end, and people who are watching afterwards can get one more commercial. It's for that 30-second commercial. I like finishing on a strong note anyway. That's really what it is. So the first one that made me laugh may not make you laugh, but this made me laugh. This made me laugh. This is Joy Reid talking about pardons in 2020.
Barack Obama never had to think about whether he needed to pardon Sasha and Valia, and yet Donald Trump is reportedly discussing pardons for his kids. The presidential pardon was originally meant to grant the president the power to temper justice with mercy. It was not enshrined in our Constitution so that a dishonorable man could reward his criminal allies, friends, and family.
Oh, it wasn't. Oh, it wasn't. Is that true? Oh. Tell us more. Oh, I'm so interested. Tell us more about what the pardon's not for.
For their corrupt practices. Trump is considering preemptive pardons for his adult children. Late last night, we learned that Trump has discussed preemptive pardons for his 3 eldest progeny. The news was first reported by the New York Times. And joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, chairman of the House.
Adam Schiff, he and Dr. Fauci being rumored to be beneficiaries, along with James and James Biden and Joe himself, beneficiaries of protective pardons. Now, Adam Schiff, to his credit, has said he doesn't want a pardon. And I actually, it's the first time in my life I think I've ever used the phrase to his credit and Adam Schiff in the same sentence. But yeah, here he is in 2020 weighing in on the notion.
House Intelligence Committee. Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime?
Oh, tell us more, Joy. Give us more, Joy. Oh, give us more.
Who's just an innocent person. Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon.
Oh, I don't know. Joy. I don't know. Oh, look at her angry face.
And they're an innocent person.
But no, it's the president's own family.
Their own family? You don't say. The president's own family? That sounds crazy.
It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family. And so there is a self-interest at play as well. It's been essentially a den of thieves environment. And so I think the president used this as his way of trying to protect those that have protected him.
You don't say. That's what it's about. That's what he's abusing the pardon for, to protect himself ultimately. Wow. How does it feel to be raised all the way up in the air on your own petard? On your own petard. Hoisted on your own petard. They had a law on the book prohibiting socialists from running until the Democrats changed it. Their ideologies was taking hold of our country. All right. Fair enough. Ever since Scott Jennings noticed that Scott Jennings looks and sounds like a young Bill Engvall? You should start saying, "Here's your son," whenever he shuts left down. I'm not familiar with who Bill Engvall is. Sorry, Death Angels. Maybe that's probably on me. That's probably on me. I don't know. Could be on me. Possibly on me. I'll assume it's on me. But yeah. All right. And I got 2 videos left. This one I think is amusing. This one's amusing. Let's just do this one real quick. This one's just a minute long.
Want to hold him? No, I'm good. Straight up, Xander's my boy, but not this hawk fool, okay?
Oh, by the way, there's no more politics. We're done with politics for the week. We're done with politics. These last 2 are not politics. They're just funny. So.
Want to hold him? No, I'm good. Straight up, Xander's my boy, but not this hawk fool, okay? Hawk's a dumb name. You come in here like you own the place with your cool vans, steezing, like you're some sort of god. You're not God. You're a 1-year-old child, okay? Everyone's jumping on his little baby dick, especially Xander, little 1-year-old douche. Like, I've known you since 9th grade, bro. You've known this guy for maybe a year. Maybe.
Yo, why is he looking at me like that? What's up, little bud? You got a staring problem, pal?
Like what, dude? He's just looking at you. He's a baby.
Look at his face. Dumb little face.
Stop.
Yo, Xan, get your...
This is a really good spoof of like all those stupid real life show things, whatever. It's pretty good spoof of
Your
it.
boy, dog. What's little, dude? What's going on? Yo, hey, what's good, dog? Get your child. What are you talking about, bro? He's just chilling, dude.
Okay, man. He's not chilling, okay? I come here to show some love to my bros.
Yeah. And I guess you're whack little child. And what do I get? Looks like he's dogging me. Looks like he wants to throw baby hands. Like he wants to fight right now, fool. So like,
baby hands.
Let's go. I'm about to fight your kid right now.
That's pretty cute. That's pretty cute. The music really adds a lot. I might have a weird sense of humor. I thought it was funny. Reality TV. That's the phrase I was looking for. That I couldn't get out of me. And then there's this guy. That's his name, Scott Seiss. This guy has on TikTok like 2 million followers. I never heard of him before. This is what he does, and oh my God, he is freaking brilliant. It's 4 minutes of just like this had me like just dying laughter. So this is the last video of the week. Obviously, I'm not here tomorrow evening. I expect to be back, God willing, Saturday night. But yeah, this is worth it.
You just lost yourself a customer. You think I own this business? You think I own IKEA? I'm a part-time employee halfway through a 2-week notice. I don't give a shit. I'm telling all my friends not to shop here. Tell them. You think I want 5 other yous running around the store? Have them call me, I'll tell them. You think you hate this place more than me? I work here. I know the sale ended last week, but can I still get a discount? Do you hear yourself? We can't go backwards. Time marches on. You want the sale from 15 years ago too? When's it end, Diane?
When does it end, Diane? When does it end?
That price, you're gonna have to go through the quantum realm with Ant-Man. Do you know how much money I spend here? More than you should. Meatballs ain't that good. Save your money. End my time. Doesn't matter how much you spend here. We don't thank our donors. This isn't PBS. Every time I come here, my order gets messed up. Then stop coming. Make my day. Every time you come here, your order's messed up. Sounds like you're making the mistake. Look inward. You're ordering the wrong shit. I'd like to speak to your manager. I'd like to speak to your mother. Tell her she should be embarrassed. She raised someone to act like a baby in public. You want to speak to the manager? Please. Manager doesn't know what's going on. Haven't you ever worked anywhere before? I know that's not right. I used to work here. Well, things change. Sorry they didn't run it by you first. You used to work here. Well, I used to be happy. Then you walked in. Can you just check in the back? Can you just accept we don't have it? The back ain't some magical place. What do you think is back there? Santa's workshop? The only thing back there is a clipboard with our schedules and some brownies Darcy brought in. The website said it was in stock, and what do your eyes say? Sometimes it's wrong. The website also has pictures of employees smiling. You see that? You should go yell at your computer instead of me. It'll get you the same result. Nothing. This is cheaper at other stores. Then shop there. Why are you here? Do you need directions? I'll get you some. I'll call you an Uber. Cheaper at other stores. I don't set the prices. I'm a seasonal employee. You working hard?
Seasonal employee. Oh my God. This guy's a freaking genius. He's a genius. I'm sorry. I can't get enough of this guy. Oh, he is a genius. He's on TikTok. He's Scott Size. Last name is Seiss.
They're hardly working. I'm hardly laughing. I'm already at work. I don't have time for a second job pretending you're funny. Why don't you tell me something I don't hear every day? Like, thank you. You should open up more registers. And who's going to work them? You think I'm the only one ringing you up because I called dibs? You want me to clone myself, or you saying you want to apply? Well, you see, we're shorthanded. Where's your resume? I can't believe they have you working Thanksgiving. I can't believe you're shopping. Why do you think I'm here? It's because of you. I have to stand here for 15 hours so you can yell at me instead of your family. I work retail. I don't even remember what Thanksgiving is. The customer is always right. About what? How to piss me off? You think you're God because you went shopping? You're not infallible, Susan. You're at the mall. Always right. That's why you're on your 9th try hitting the button for credit. Do you have any coupons for me? That's what I ask you. We all have our roles to play. Oh, you think you just found a cheat code for the store? Oh yeah, I keep a few 100% offs back here for the smart customers. Bring your own. Didn't scan? It must be free, and you must be out of your mind. To think you're the first person to say that. You're not even the first one today. Don't worry about the scan. I'll type in the product code and charge you double. I swear, I fake laugh at this job so much, I forget how my real one sounds. You're open for 10 more minutes? I'll be quick. Quickly move into the exit? This ain't a basketball game. We're not playing to the buzzer. You had the choice to hold a bunch of minimum wage workers hostage or go shopping tomorrow. You chose wrong. Get out.
What's wrong with me?
Do you work here? Obviously, yes. How many people you know wear a name tag recreationally? You think I'm behind the counter because I got lost? Do I work here? No, I'm just dressed like this because I'm going to the midnight premiere of IKEA the movie.
Oh my God. Don't tell me that wasn't amazing. I'm sorry, Susan. I told you were going to like it. I told you were going to like it. That guy is great. Like I said, on TikTok, at Scott, S-E-I. Scott is with 2 T's. S-C, here, this is how it's spelled like this over here. SCOTTSEISS. Scott Size. Dude is awesome. All right. That's my show. I'm sticking to it. I will be back here, God willing, Saturday night. Till then, my friends, I know I didn't do something this week. I plan on doing on locals, goodlogis.locals.com. I plan on pulling a double shift next week. It's gonna be a double shift. That's probably where I'm gonna end up doing. I'm gonna end up doing that whole review of the trans oral argument. I'm feeling like that's gonna be a locals thing, and it's gonna take me like 5 hours probably. So that's gonna be next week. That's what I'm feeling like it's going to be. So I apologize those of you that I didn't get to do one this week, but I do plan on doing a double shift next week. Till Saturday night, have a phenomenal weekend. Thank you for tipping the host. Thank you so much for tipping the host. That's very thoughtful of you, Snacks. I appreciate that. And yeah, what what they say in the following? One of the 2 things that they routinely, that's the word I'm trying to spit out, routinely say are lab meat is for they them, not for you, and don't eat the bugs. Don't do it. I appreciate your time, your patience, and your attention. Have a phenomenal weekend. Good night and Godspeed.